You're listening to the podcast, So There I Was. This is episode 48 with Carrott.
What a great storyteller and fellow naval aviator.
Right. Funny, fast, great.
Naval Academy graduate, surgrad, another surgrad, and an S-3 Viking.
And kind of a good luck charm. You wanted to be in his squadron because in spite of some tremendously horrific mishaps, everybody seemed to walk away.
Which is truly a miracle.
It really is.
And he was an LSO, landing signal officer, has some pretty terrifying stories of, ramp strike, having to jump over the side of the ship.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where he came up with an idea, which led to the title of this week's show, Cat Shots and Orgasms.
It's a great story.
You just got to listen because we couldn't even begin to do that one justice.
Nope, can't do it. Not even gonna try.
So here he is, folks. Here comes Carrott.
Sit on the ejection seat handle.
Don't do it.
On the tanker, through the weather. Oh, and to the tanker crew who did that. Thanks a lot. We really appreciated that. I'm just kidding. No, I'm not that. There I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly...
So there I was.
Which is how all great aviation tales begin. You're listening to the podcast, So There I Was. RePete here, coming to you from New Hampshire today, joined by my co-host, Fig.
Hello, gentlemen.
How you doing, Fig?
I'm coming to you live. Well, I guess we're recording from Denver, Colorado. And it's a pleasure to be here. We have with us fellow naval aviator, Carrott. Welcome, Carrott.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. And I use the term very loosely.
As you should.
There you go. Got to stop swearing. There's gentlemen in the area. All right. So Carrott is a former American Airlines captain. We can say that because they can't fire you now.
Though they tried.
Unsuccessfully.
And Navy S-3 pilot. Welcome.
Well, thank you, sir.
We're super glad to have you. How is it you wound up A, interested in aviation, and B, flying Navy airplanes?
Well, the neighborhood I grew up in Prairie Village, Kansas, in the 50s, had two Braniff pilots in the neighborhood.
Oh, yeah.
And my dad was an ex-Army colonel and as a communications officer in a fighter squadron and fighter group in World War II. And it was just a neighborhood that had a lot of aviation stories in it. When we were kids, when the neighbor across the street would go down to downtown airport in Kansas City to start his trip for Braniff, the kids would all pile in the car. At the time, everybody only had one car. And while he was in flight planning, et cetera, we'd go out to his DC-3 and climb in the cockpit and play bomber pilot over Germany.
Oh my gosh.
And so, some of the guys at Richards Gebar, which everybody calls Dickie Goober, out at south of Kansas City, was in a fighter base, air transport command base. And some of the guys in the F-100 squadron, and then they transitioned to 102s and then 106s, were to begin with in the early 50s, were guys my dad had been in the service with. And we'd go out there for barbecues and watch them fly fighters around. And in fact, the first time I ever heard a plane go to break the sound barrier was at an Armed Forces Day fly air show at Dickie Goober. And then that Super F-100 went by at about 50 feet, going Mach 1 plus. Everybody watched him go by, and then that sound wave smacked you in the back of the head when it finally got there.
That hurt.
Well, of course you were interested in aviation at that part. I mean, who the hell wouldn't want to be?
Yeah. So I just grew up wanting. I read everything I could in history on World War II and World War I flying, and I set up my life so that I could be a naval aviator. And that in all the reading I did, I figured that anybody can land on a 10,000-foot runway, but trying to land on a moving target that's only 440 yards wide, the landing area, would probably be a challenge. And therefore, you had to be a better pilot than the guys that couldn't hack that.
The gauntlet.
Was it that those gringos said, how hard could it be? You never have a crosswind and you got a wire to stock it. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Don't have to
But I
flare.
don't want to live with 5,300 guys.
Right.
That's right. Exactly. So you've heard them.
Certainly
Oh,
did.
man,
Oh my
that's
gosh.
awesome.
That's a funny song.
Right. Oh, it is. So
Well, that explains it.
what was your commissioning source?
Yeah. How'd you get commissioned?
My dad recommended at the beginning. I wanted to be an enlisted man because everybody glorified how, all the enlisted guys in World War II. And my dad, who was an officer, said, "Hey, if you want to go in the service, the best way to go is an officer because they live a lot better than the people that aren't officers." And that made sense to me.
Do.
And after I decided I wanted to be a pilot and decided the Navy was a better way to go, I applied to our congressman, the 3rd Congressional in Prairie Village. It turned out it was a man by the name of Wynn, who happened to be a fraternity brother of my father's at Kansas State. I applied for a Naval Academy appointment. I got one of 6 nominations at the time. I don't know if you guys know how the Academy worked at the time.
No.
Every congressman and senator could appoint a person, one person. And if that person was qualified, the Academy had to take him. And if you did that, you had one set of friends, family that would vote for you. Or you could nominate 6 candidates, let the Academy choose the one they wanted, and you had 6 sets of parents, 6 sets of friends, etc.
Right.
And it was a lot more votes.
Right.
So I was one of 6. And in April that year, let me back up. And playing football at Shawnee Mission East, in our last game, Bird Dog for West Point. Bird Dog is a scout that watches high school football players. Saw me play and asked me if I was interested in the academies. And I said, yeah, but at the time I had the nomination to Annapolis. And he said, how about, you may not get in, things won't work out. How about if we put you in the West Point prep school program as a backup? And I thought, okay. That went through, and I was scheduled to go to Bullis Prep School in Washington, D.C. after my senior year in high school. But time went on. In April, I went to the mailbox on Saturday morning, opened the letter from the Academy, and it said basically, thanks, but no thanks. We selected one of the other 6 guys. Well, being a Carrott top, that pissed me off something fierce. So I went to my Naval Academy catalog, looked up the telephone number of the athletic department, and at 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning in Kansas City, 11 o'clock back there, I called and got a guy by the name of Commander Bowler on the phone. And I said, this is who I am. Just found out I didn't get the appointment from the 3rd Congressional in Kansas City. I just want you to know that I'm going to go to West Point's prep school program next year and then spend 4 years kicking Navy's ass playing football. Commander Bowler, I didn't know at the time, was the athletic director at the Naval Academy. And he said, back off, kid. Let me get your information.
Slow down.
This. Yeah. Let me look into it. And I'll get back to you. Well, Monday morning, I got called out a first hour period to the office, and it was Commander Bowler on the phone saying, well, congratulations. We put you in our Naval Academy prep school program. And I thought, well, that's okay. I'm already in West Point. And I told him that I'm going to Bullis Prep, and that's the Naval Academy prep school program also. So just tell them you're going to pay for it instead of West Point. And he said, and this I hate, oh, no. We looked at your record, and we think that would just be repeating your senior year in high school, and you certainly don't need that. We're going to send you to Oklahoma Military Academy in Claremore, Oklahoma.
What?
Yeah, that didn't send...
What?
Yeah. Didn't send chills down my back. It kind of puckered my asshole, if you pardon my French.
No.
But he said, this is, at 18, you believe almost anything. And he said, by going to OMA, you're going to be taking your freshman year in college. So you won't be wasting a year of your life. And as 18 years old, you go, a year of my life? I don't want to waste that. So I agreed. Consequently, I was in their prep school program, and a week later, I got a letter from Bupers, and I opened it. And this is April 1966. Vietnam was going really big. They were drafting like crazy.
Oh, sure.
And this letter said, congratulations on your acceptance in our prep school program. This letter authorizes you to join either the Navy or Marine Corps, regulars or reserve programs to increase your chances of getting into the academy. Well, again, being an 18-year-old idealistic, know nothing, wet behind the ears, I said, well, that sounds like, if you're going to be a good officer, you should know what the enlisted guys go through. So I think I'll take advantage of this. And talking with my dad, he agreed. And on a Saturday morning, I went down to the 9th Naval District headquarters, walked in the door, and there were about 100 guys in there. Took a number like you do at a bakery, waited for my number to be called, and went in, and a chief sitting at the desk said, "What do you want, kid?" And I said, "Hey, I got this letter from a Vice Admiral Bagley who calls himself Bupers. I don't know what that is, but he says I can join the Navy if I want to. The reserves, I kind of like to do that." Yeah. "What are you talking about? Let me see that letter." And I handed it to him. "Where did you get this thing?" I said, you can't read. It's right there. It's on the letterhead, and he signed it with his name. "You wait here, kid. I'm going to go see the captain." He went in the office, and I saw him talking to the guy. Next thing I know, I'm standing in front of the captain. He goes, "How did you get this letter?" I said, What? You don't know how to read in the Navy? This is really amazing. I said, "It's obvious. It's from a Vice Admiral Bagley." He calls him. "You don't think I'll call it this number, do you?" I said, "If you call it, I don't care." And he did. And Vice Admiral Bagley actually answered. And it was, "I got this letter here. It says that he can join the reserves or the regulars." And "Yes, sir. Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Right away, sir. No, sir. Never again, sir." And he hung up the phone and said, "I don't know who you know, kid, but welcome to the Navy." And so I was signed up in the reserves. And I didn't realize I'd made a mistake until I stepped off the bus. And there was a 260-pound, 6'5" redheaded chief standing in front of me who took one look at me and my red hair and said, "You're here to piss me off, aren't you, kid?" And for 2 weeks,
that's how I roll.
He made my life fun.
Yeah, I bet he did.
I bet he did.
And,
so was that up at Glenview? Where'd you go through basic?
Yeah, Glenview. Which, incidentally, my first airplane ride ever was on TWA from Kansas City to Chicago O'Hare. And at the time, I'm in my white uniform, Navy white uniform, Dixie cap. Yeah. And I'm thinking, this is probably a bad time to figure out you hate flying.
Right. Right. Oops.
Yeah. But anyway, I went through the 2 weeks of boot camp, and the next 2 weeks was supposed to be on a destroyer escort in the Great Lakes, learning how to be a Navy sailor. And the chief called me in one day, just before, at the end of this 2 week period, and said, "I don't know who you know, but I've got orders here to get you out of here and to Kansas City and down to Oklahoma Military Academy, wherever God knows that is, by Sunday. Pack your bag, you're gone."
How about that?
Thank you, Jesus.
Right.
I was never so glad for 2 days in August of my life.
Oh my gosh! Right. So at the prep school, did you play football or did they not?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, junior college, Oklahoma junior college football, which is a whole different kind of animal. There were 6 of us for the prep school program there for the Navy, and it's just a brutal kind of football. We had a receiver that went out and practice, made a diving catch and knocked out his 2 front teeth. Came back to the coach holding him, blood dripping from his mouth, going, "Coach, I knocked my teeth out." And all the coaches began taking their plates out of their mouth and going, "You're a football player."
Yeah, welcome aboard, sir.
Right, stick them back in; they may stay.
What position did you play in football?
Defensive end.
Oh, so the acorn didn't fall very far from the tree.
Unfortunately, my son never saw the light. He was offense.
Okay. All right, sorry, I interrupted you. You were going somewhere with that.
We had to wear Army uniforms. We marched and played. It's like trying to set themselves up as a West Point of the plains. And it was basically junior college kids and the 4-year high school. And they were either delinquents that the court sent there, or their parents were rich and were trying to get rid of them and send them there. So it was like a different kind of world experience.
Oh yeah, that's quite a crowd.
Yeah.
from a kid from Prairie Village, Kansas.
Oh, yeah. And we played the University of Tulsa when Jerry Rome was a big All-American quarterback. I know this predates you guys, but he was very big, kind of a Roger Staubach kind of guy. And we played their freshman team, and this Commander Bowler came down because they were playing the varsity the next day, and met with each of the 6 of us. And he sat there and pulled my file out and said, "I don't know why we didn't get you in the academy this year. You have certainly had all the grades and the SATs. We should have given you a nomination this year."
Well, yeah. Now you tell me.
Yeah, this is 3 months into the program, and now I get this kind of thing. But it worked. They guaranteed anybody who went in the prep school program would get a nomination. I got mine through the Naval Reserve. They take 50 a year from each of the 4 regulars, Marine, Navy.
Okay.
So came through the reserves.
Nice. Now, was that pre-major time? Because we had Panther was on, and he was one of the first classes that got to major. I think he was started in 68.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Does that sound right, Faye?
Panther is a classmate of mine.
Get out of here.
Okay.
Because I was 68. We're a class of 71. We started in, 67. I'm sorry. I started in June of 67 after my high school graduation in 66. So he was a year behind me.
Okay.
They changed from everybody taking exactly the same courses my junior year, my second class year, and allowed you to choose a major. And I chose political science. And the only...
How'd that work out for you?
Pretty good, except I had to take 4 years of French. And from the same French professor. And at the end of the last semester, the last day of classes before the final exam, first class year, he pulled me inside and said, "Monsieur Getcha, if you promise never to speak the language, if you promise never to try to tell anybody that you ever took the language, I will give you a C for a final grade."
Thank you.
Which is way higher than I was aiming for at the time.
Deal. You didn't even say "oui d'accord."
I just said, "Praise Jesus."
There you go.
Thank you, Jesus.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Perfect.
So you graduated 71 from the academy, and then straight to flight school.
Almost. At this particular time, it was kind of in a lull of Vietnam. So the bottom line is I had to go to the fleet and serve on a ship for 9 months before I could go to flight school. Service selection night, you go down to a big auditorium, and they call you in order of your class, and you select what you want to do. There are different boards around. And the aviation board, you went over and they had flight school start dates. And by the time I got there, the first date was in February of 72.
Oh, shit.
So I ended up on the John S. McCain, a DDG out of Long Beach for 6 months before I went to flight school.
Hey, just as a side note, how did the Naval Academy's football team do the years that you played against Army?
Okay. We won my plebe year and my first class year, the 2 most important years.
Okay.
The first class plebe year, if you win, and this was always the Saturday after Thanksgiving, you got carry on. You didn't have to run in the halls. You didn't have to brace up. You didn't have to eat square meals. You could be a normal person from that weekend until you came back after Christmas break in January. So it was huge.
Oh, yeah.
To win that year. And then first class year, because obviously it gives you bragging rights going into the service.
Right. Your last game is against another service academy.
Yeah. However, I'll tell you, it came down to decision. I could either play football or I could graduate from the academy. I couldn't do both. So I decided to stop playing football after my youngster year, which is sophomore year at the academy. My roommate flunked out, and I came within 3 people of being called in front of the academic board for malfeasance, if you will. And when they stopped kicking people out. And after that, I decided I better get serious about school, etc.
Okay.
It didn't.
What did we learn last week? What do you call the last guy in his class?
He's the anchor man.
Graduate.
Yeah, graduate.
Right. Anchor man, but he's the graduate.
Incidentally, the anchor man in the class of 69 lived across the hall from me. He was an offensive tackle for us. And that man saved my ass more times than I care to tell you about, from the assholes in the squadron that wanted to run this young man's ass into the ground.
Well, you have him to thank for that then.
Yes, I did. He was a very good friend.
So flight school in spring of 72. Okay.
Yep. Meridian VT1, of course, 30 some hours. The instructor, we got the first day of training where you actually go out to the flight line. They assign you an instructor, and 2 of us had an instructor. And the first question he asked after introducing himself, what do you want to fly? My compatriot sitting next to me said, I want to fly helos. And I said, I want to fly jets. And by God, that's the way he worked it. I didn't know at the time, but having been an instructor, I now understand that pretty much the fix was in for me. Okay. That he'd make sure that my grades were good enough that I got jet selected.
Excellent. And that was in Meridian?
Yeah.
Not Pensacola?
No. At the time, you could stay in Pensacola, but not very many people did. You either went to Beeville, Kingsville, or Meridian.
Okay.
And when I heard Meridian, again, one of those, oh no.
Right.
And sure enough, I got BT9 in Meridian for basic. And I spent the next 3 years of my life there.
Oh, because you got surgraded.
Plowback surgrad. The way it worked is we started advanced jets the day McCain came home from the north. We watched him on TV get off the airplane and limp over to be greeted and everything. And then we went in and started academic.
Wow.
VT7 and advanced jets there.
Okay. So was that TA4s back then?
Yep, TA4s.
Okay.
Biggest squadron in the Navy, they had over 120 TA4s.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was huge. Big. Yeah. We got our wings in June of 73. My class in June, they decided that the war had ended when McCain came home. It was all over, that they didn't need pilots anymore in the Navy. So 50% of the graduates in June were sent to the fleet. The bottom 50% were sent to the fleet, never to fly again for the Navy. The top 50% were all plowed back to the training command.
To instructor jobs, yeah.
So obviously you were in the top 50%, thank goodness.
Well, I don't know whether I was or not, but as a student, I was kind of bored because you only fly once or twice. If you really like it twice a day, some days you don't fly at all. So I had asked the XO of the squadron if I could have a job in the squadron. And he assigned me to be the branch officer for the paraloft and the ejection seat guys. So I was working in the squadron. And when this came out, they requested me for VT7.
Oh, so that worked out good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it worked out really good for a while. And as a new instructor, you do all the FAM and instrument work. My first student was a Marine helicopter pilot, captain, back from Vietnam. At this time, now that the war was over, all the guys that went through Army helicopter training, they now had to go back through Navy flight training to get their unrestricted aviator on their file.
Okay.
And my first student, this Marine captain, had the habit of every time we'd sit down for a brief, he'd have his logbook out, paging through it. I don't know if you guys know, in the Navy logbooks, the combat time is green. Night time's red, normal time's black, but combat time is always in green ink. There'd be page after page after page of green time, trying to intimidate me. And it worked. It worked pretty good. My first GCA hop with him in the back, he was coming in, and at 200 feet, when the controller told him to go around, he dropped the nose and added power, which in an A4 slams you into the ground a lot faster than what you thought you were going to do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It scared the bejesus out of me. I grabbed the airplane. It wasn't until later on that I found out the way you go around in a helicopter is you lower the collective to change the pitch angle on the rotors and add power.
Yeah. He was just doing muscle memory, man.
Yes, it was all muscle memory. It took me several of those. The next time I was ready for him, but the first time, oh Lord, you talk about a pucker factor.
Oh, surprise.
Incidentally, our first day in Pensacola was a physiology hour, and the flight surgeon came in to talk about physiology. He turned around on the board and put the word lemur on the board, wrote lemur. And he said, gentlemen, the definition of lemur is a cold shot of urine to your heart. He said, if you're not lucky, you'll experience that once. If you're lucky, you'll experience more than once, probably many times in your career. And To say I had a lemur on that GCA hop with that Marine was an understatement.
Yeah, GCA.
Right.
GCA stands for
Ground controlled approach.
Ground control
all right.
approach.
I didn't know if we had covered that before, but I just wanted to make sure that was
I don't know
out
if we
there.
have or not.
GCA,
Yeah.
ground control approach. That's,
You actually got a controller sitting there going, you're a little high, down and on glide slope, slightly left. Yeah.
Come left, come right.
yeah.
You're going
It was
high,
the
you're going low.
Navy and Marine Corps version of a precision approach. None of our airplanes were equipped with ILSs like the Air Force guys had. So because we're much better.
First ILS I ever flew was for American.
Yeah, right.
And it was like,
right.
what the hell is this?
Hey, so I'm just curious. 3 years as a cert grad or a instructor.
2 years. Yeah, 2 years.
2 years. How much flying? How much A4 time did you end up with?
1,000 hours.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But here's the deal. I wanted fighters. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. And so I was going to do everything I could to be a fighter pilot. So I would sit in the back of lead solos. The way ACM, Air Combat Maneuvering Hops, work in the training command, there's always a lead, and the student goes with an instructor on the first, say, offensive hop, and he teaches you how to do yo-yos, etc. And then the student goes solo, but there's always a solo lead. So I'd fly my 1 or 2 hops as an instructor, and then I'd go jump in the back seat of some ACM lead and fly with them. And after doing that for about 8 months, I was flying on a Friday night in the back seat of the ACM stand officer, the guy that runs the program. And we got out of it, and he said, when we landed, he said, if you're too stupid to go to the club on Friday afternoon to drink, I'm going to qualify you so that I can go to the club and drink.
Right on.
So at about 10 months in the program, I became an ACM instructor and was one of the first plowbacks, was the first plowback in Meridian that ever became an ACM instructor.
Very
so
nice.
for the last year, I flew ACM and tactical hops the whole time. Not being the smartest kid in the room, I decided that I wanted to be an LSO when I was in the fleet. So why not try to be an LSO in the training command, which they never had and they never done before. Went in and talked to the squadron LSOs. We had 2 from the fleet. We talked to the detailers and et cetera, and they said, we've never done it before, but what the hell? Why not? Try it and let's see how it goes. So I started LSOing my last year also, and went to the boat with them and
I'll be darned.
started to be an LSO. And that was my big undoing. That screwed me over because...
Well, landing signal officer, the definition of that is standing on the boat and watching your friends fly.
Yeah, watching them try to kill you. But because I was an LSO when our detailing came up, and the way this SERGRAD, 50% went to the fleet, 50% became plowbacks. Of those 50%, only 50% were going to go to the fleet. So you had to be good enough that you made the cut again. And that's one of the reasons I volunteered to be an LSO. And when they were detailing our group, I made the cut, but I guess they all sit in a room around desk, and they were transitioning S2s, which were a prop airplane, to S3s, which were jets.
Yeah. And
the damn S3 detailer called out, hey, I need an LSO. Was there anybody got an LSO?
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Uh-oh. So, yeah, I got one here. He's coming out of the training command. I'll take him. So I got S3s out of that. And on the morning that we knew we were all waiting. We knew that it was going to come down any day. And in the squadron, I went in one morning and they said, hey, the orders came in for you guys. And I said, what did I get? And they said, the skipper won't let me tell you. He said, wait till he comes in this morning. I said, where is he? He said, he's out playing golf. So I jumped in my car and drove up to the golf course and chased the skipper down. Yes. On a green, and said, Skipper, I got to know. I gots to know. And he said, Kip, I'm sorry, you're not going to like it. They don't do the kind of flying you like to do. They're a different kind of animal. You got an S3. And I mean, I felt my heart drop out of my chest down in my shoes.
Oh, no.
Skipper, come on, you don't play with me. And he said, I'm not playing. He said, go to the squadron. When we get there, we'll start calling and see if we can't get it changed. And we couldn't.
Oh, boy.
So I went off to be an LSO for a brand new S3 squadron that they were putting together. It was actually the last S2 squadron in the fleet. And And the way it worked, the S-3 was an airplane that was meant to have one set of controls in the left seat. There'd be a right seat, but he'd be working the radar, the FLIR, the ESM. They had a AW in the back left seat. He read all the sonobuoy information, did all the sound stuff, listened to that, tried to determine what pumps, et cetera, he was listening to. And then the tactical officer sat in the right back seat. Well, the S-3 community, the VS community wasn't highly rated in the Navy. And there were admirals that said, you're going to put stoof pilots into a jet, they're going to kill themselves. We'll put a second set of controls in the right seat, and we'll put a jet qualified aviator in the right seat to make sure these guys don't kill themselves. So immediately you had a community that was split between senior S-2 pilots that had flown props their whole life and nuggets coming in that were all jet trained aviators. And it was not a good situation.
And that S-2 those were monster reciprocating piston engines, radial piston engines.
When I got to this VS-24, they'd just given up their S-2s, and the LSO I was replacing hadn't left yet. And he said, "Hey, you want to go flying?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "We'll go pick up an S-2 from the RAG." We walked over the yellow sheets, signed for the airplane. Then he said, "Let's go next door and get a lunch." And I thought, what? Went in and got a box lunch to take out to the airplane. And I thought, oh, this is really a different kind of flying. Never once did I eat a lunch flying in an A4.
Right.
So, hey, might have lost your lunch flying in an A4 once or twice.
Did you know Chaz from the fleet?
I asked him that pre-show. He was in Nimitz, and Chaz was Forrestal.
Okay.
One of the things I wanted to talk about in the training command was my flight jacket and the saga of my leather flight jacket.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Tell that story.
My first Navy student, I picked up in basic instruments and took him through to advanced instruments, flying under the back and under the bag in an A4. And one of the things they're supposed to do was go on cross countries with these guys. So he had an uncle out in LA that got tickets for us on a Saturday for the USC-UCLA game. And I put in a request to do a cross country out to El Toro in LA, got it approved. And on a Friday afternoon, we took off from Meridian. I was going to stop at Dyes for gas, but our fuel was so good. It was such a great day, and there wasn't much headwind going west. We stretched it all the way to Cannon Air Force Base. And the old adage, never refuel at some place you don't want to spend a lot of time at.
Right.
Bit me in the ass. Coming out of there at sundown, we had a complete electrical failure. Now, my student's under the bag. He's still climbing out. And I'm sitting there going, oh, man, this football game's great. They're playing for first place in the Pac West. If I just follow Interstate 10, I probably can find LA, but never having been flown into LA, I thought, how the hell am I going to find El Toro in that LA basin? And as I'm trying to ponder this, continuing to fly, we had a hydraulic failure at the same time. And in the A4, the first thing under hydraulic failure is a big red caution fire. The hydraulic bowsers sit above the engine. So I decided that enough of this, time to go back to Cannon. We declared an emergency. I took the airplane. We dove into Cannon and landed. And it was such a bad thing that the damn duty officer came out in his own personal car and picked us up on the flight line, took us over to the BOQ, and then to the O Club. He felt so bad for us and dropped us off. At 7:00, we walked into the O Club on a Friday night, and there was not a single person there but the bartender. And we sat down and looked at each other and said, this just gets worse and worse.
Yeah. Let's get this party started, huh? Yeah.
We're drinking our beer, feeling as low as you can, when all of a sudden the doors opened, and in came a whole F-111 squadron. They had been doing a dining in. And they all piled in here, and the first thing we know, the CO sent over a couple of beers for us, and then the XO sent over some beers, and it started working down the line until it was the junior officers in the squadron were buying us shots of tequila. And we're at the bar now. And
Big night.
I decided that it was only fair to show Navy hospitality, reciprocate. And so the four of us, my student and the two JOs from the F-111 squadron, went through a whole fifth of tequila trying to who could outlast the other one. The next morning, I woke up spread eagle, sans clothes on the BOQ room floor, did the toe and finger crawl over to the porcelain tub.
Sure.
Eventually staggered out and began getting dressed, and my leather flight jacket wasn't around. Instead, there was an Air Force nylon green flight jacket there. And I thought, that son of a bitch stole my jacket from me, but he was at least nice enough to leave me a jacket. I put it on, and it came to there on my arms.
Right.
So
it was a trade. He traded you.
He traded.
He traded you. Not a good trade.
The way it works, we had Marine captains in the squadron, instructors. And the way the Navy works, they send a Marine captain and a mech to fix our airplane. And my student and I sat in ops and watched the UCLA-USC game, hung over, watching this. Then we flew back that night to Meridian. I landed. My next door neighbor was a short guy and had always wanted this nylon green Air Force flight jacket. It was kind of sought after at the time. So I traded the jacket for a tailhook, A4 tailhook.
Nice.
And this guy's name was Fireball. So named because, like one of the other people on your podcast, his airplane was on fire on a GCA hop. And he decided instead of ejecting, he was 1.5 miles short of the field, he'd just come on in and land. And so from that time on, he was called Fireball. Because he was just a blaze of fire coming down final. So
I'm glad we can laugh about that, though, really.
Right? Exactly.
Years go by.
They don't always end that well.
Years go by. This guy, my buddy, is now a Delta pilot, and he's a stretch 8 check airman as an engineer. And he's calling the roll on a new class sitting in front of him. And one of the guys, he calls a name, and he says, "Here." And he looks at him and goes, "No, you're not." He said, "That is the name on your jacket. The name on your jacket says Kip Gatchell." And he goes, "Oh, this old thing?" He said, "I won this in a poker game." Well, he goes, "No, you didn't. I have your jacket hanging in my closet. You stole it from him after you got him drunk in Cannon, New Mexico. And we don't allow thieves at Delta Airlines. Pack your things and get out." And the guy just turned white. He had to admit, "I'm just pulling your leg, but I know the story behind that jacket." Well, 20 years go by. My son's roommate in college, they both went to Louisiana Tech and got all their ratings there, and then followed each other around. He was a United pilot. He's sitting in the bar in Amarillo, Texas, and calls me up one night and goes, "Would you like your flight jacket back?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "I'm sitting in the bar, and there's a guy at the bar who says he's Kip Gatchell wearing a Navy flight jacket.
Yeah.
You want me to get it back for you?"
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Let him keep it. If he's had it that long, he deserves it. But I thought that's kind of an unusual. I mean, how many times do you keep running into your old jacket?
Right. It's a small world, and aviation's an even smaller world. So
that's a good story.
Yeah.
It's the flight jacket that wouldn't go away.
Yeah. Anyway, ended up in VS-24. We had 25 pilots, and I was a Nugget LSO. The two S2 LSOs had extended. This gets into the CV, CVA, and CVS stuff. The Navy was going from 2 carrier groups, any submarine in attack, to 1 carrier. And they were going to put the ASW on the big boat. And this squadron VS-24 made the last CVS cruise, actually it was the first CV cruise on the Intrepid, where they put the S2s with attack airplanes to see how it would work. And because of that, their LSOs had extended for this extra cruise and couldn't extend anymore. So I ended up as a Nugget LSO with no senior LSOs over me. and responsible for getting 25 guys carrier qual. And came back. We spent 6 months out at North Island getting transitioned, picked up our new airplanes at the factory in Long Beach and flew them back to Cecil Field in Florida. And the first day back, the CO calls me into the office and said, when's my first deck? Excuse me? He said, what? When's my first deck? I want to know by noon when my first deck is so I can go out and carrier qual on. I said, I don't know how to do that. And he said, you're my LSO, figure it out.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I had to go shopping through other hangars trying to find LSOs that tell me how the hell you qualify a squadron and get a carrier deck.
So how does one get a carrier deck?
You call around.
Carrier deck.
And our first deck I got was the
he started making phone calls.
Lexington out of Pensacola, a training carrier.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
I
landed on Did you land on the Lex?
I got 16 traps on them.
I got 10. I got 6.
I got 6. I got 10.
Hey, all right.
Yeah. When we were students, the Lex was in the yard, and the T2 we couldn't get any traps. So in the A4 we got the 4 that you're supposed to get in the T2 plus our 6.
How about that?
And that's probably the first time I ever flew with a completely drunk pilot.
When you went to the boat?
Yeah, we'd been out steaming the night before because our overhead wasn't until 3:00. So we closed all the bars down in Meridian at 2. And at 6, they called us and told us we had a 10 o'clock overhead.
Oops.
Yeah. And the way these guys had worked it, the instructors had worked it.
No drinking within 50 feet. You were fine.
Yeah.
Because we hadn't had traps as T2 students, they convinced our skipper that what we needed to do was ride in their back seat so we could see what trapping and catapult shots were all about as nuggets, which was a complete boondoggle for these guys so they could get traps.
You bet.
So I'm sitting in the back seat going out to the boat the first time, and my first trap was sitting in the back seat. And I mean to tell you, it was amazing because you got nothing to do except try to peer around the guy in front of you.
Right.
And all of a sudden you're being slammed into the instrument panel on the trap. They took us right over to the cat, hooked us up, and took the cat shot. And I thought my heart was going to come out of my mouth. It was the most amazing feeling you've ever experienced when you don't have to do anything except ride it. It was amazing. And we went back to the beach, and then the next day we went out as nugget students and got our traps.
Well, it's kind of nice having a preview.
Yeah.
Right. So when you alluded to this, the guy that you were in the back seat of, you're pretty sure he wasn't functioning as. And
that's
kind of unnerving.
From this experience, I tried to convince the skipper in the squadron after I was plowed back to give me some money to study, because I figured I could do a physiological study of how you couldn't survive a cat shot while you're having sex at the same time. And I figured with enough money, sit in the back of the A4, have a young lady straddling you. And you got to appreciate, this takes a lot of time work because there's such a delay from when you salute the cat officer to when he actually points down the deck and they push the button to fire the cat.
Right.
It's all about timing.
Yes.
And I figured it's going to take a lot of work to get this down. And you take the cat shot, you have the orgasm, and I figured that would probably kill you.
Yeah.
And the skipper said, what if it doesn't? Then I've wasted my money. I'd say, skipper, cat shot, orgasm, ejection. Have her pull the face curtain as you're taking the cat shot with an orgasm. And I'm pretty sure if there would be no surviving that. He never bought off on it.
Gee, I wonder why. That sounds like a really good idea, though. On paper.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
There's almost a show title in there somewhere.
Yeah.
But that's a lot of words, cat shot and cat shots and orgasms.
We may have to paraphrase. Hey, before we go any farther, there was an acronym thrown out that I don't know we've ever covered. ASW. I know what it means, but can you explain it?
Yeah, anti-submarine warfare.
That's basically what your weapon system was all about.
The S-3 was all designed to fight submarines.
Okay.
It carried sensors, and weapons was the torpedo or depth charges, including nuclear depth charges. We had a radar that was good at 160 miles, supposedly could pick up a Coke can at 160 miles.
Wow.
It had a tremendous ESM suite on it that could gather all this radar emissions and be able to triangulate where the the transmitters were coming from.
With all that electronic equipment going on, I'm surprised any of you people ever reproduced.
And our big computers on that, we had 3 of these things, was 376K.
Wow, that was a big computer.
That was huge.
Holy
it was the first
shit,
big,
right?
the F-14 and the S-3 were the first computerized airplanes in the Navy. And they were big. And one of the things we learned in the S-3 with all this electronic stuff, we had to start up 45 minutes before our cat shots so we could get everything online and see if it would work. And you turn all the systems on, and if it didn't work, the first thing you did is just turn it on and off.
Right.
If that didn't clear the fault, you turned it off and called the ETs in. They told you to turn it on. They'd see that the message still was there. They'd go and unseat the box in the back of the airplane in the rack.
Call that a re-rack.
Yeah. The S-3 had a tunnel behind the 2 guys in the back with all these electronic boxes in it. And they go and unplug it and plug it back in. And if that didn't clear it, they'd send it down to the shops and put a new box in.
Big Control-Alt-Delete there to reboot.
Exactly.
I imagine cooling was probably a big pain in the ass too.
They always had big air conditioning doohickeys plugged into us to keep the electronics cool.
And now your iPhone or your Android has
much more,
50 times the computing power, 500 times the computing power.
Unbelievable.
It's crazy.
All those racks.
You alluded to in our preamble about your night in the barrel.
Oh, okay.
Talk about that.
Yeah. The S-3, we took off 5 minutes before the air wing because we had very big wings. They folded, but when they came down, they took up a lot of deck space. So to get rid of us, they'd shoot us 5 minutes before the rest of the air wing. And we'd been at mid-cruise stand down and had just gone out for the first line period out of Sigonella into the Med. And we got a real world tasking that the Russians were bringing down a nuclear attack boat to bring into the Med. And he was supposed to be coming through the Straits of Gibraltar that night. And in the meantime, there was a diesel electric boat sitting outside the Strait of Gibraltar on the surface, waiting for the Russian to show up so they could start doing the crazy Ivan dance to get rid of the American attack boat that was following the Russian down. And so we got tasked to go out and spend the night over the top of this diesel electric boat with our FLIR, which allowed us to see him just like it was daytime. And the idea was when he pulled the plug, we'd call control and tell him the Russians are starting their dance. And so the deck was moving about 40 to 50 feet that night as we're manning up. The whole air wing's getting ready to go launch. And just before about 10 minutes before the launch, the air boss comes on and says, cancel the launch the Viking. The S-3's name was the Viking.
Right. Yeah.
And I said, boss, let's reason together. Can't we cancel too? Launch the Viking. So the next thing I know, bam, we're shot off. And the whole air wing's been canceled. I'm flying with my assistant LSO, who's in the left seat. And the way the Navy works, you need 2 landings when you come from a night carrier landing's good for 7 days, period. That's it. After 7 days, you need 2-day traps, 2-day landings before you can do a night trap. So this is our first day out. Joe had my assistant LSO, Joe, had his two landings. I'd only had 1, so I wasn't night qualified. I wasn't qualified to go at night in the right seat. So I'm sitting in the right seat working the radar and FLIR for Joe, who's flying in the left seat as the pilot in command. And we go out, sit on top of this Russian diesel boat for 4 hours. And I'm telling Joe, this is not good. When we come back, the whole damn boat's been staying up for 4 hours waiting for us. And I said, what's going to happen? They're going to bring us in at 1,200 feet at 450 knots. And about 3 miles behind the boat, they're going to call, dirty up, call the ball. And that's exactly what happened. And now you call the ball, and the first thing we hear is disregard the ball, the deck's moving. And it's like, oh, God, here we go. Our first pass, we had to climb to get above the back of the boat. And so that was that was our first wave off. The next pass, the boat rolled into us, and we had to do a go around to avoid hitting the island that was rolling in front of us. We did 2 bolters, and as we were climbing out for the next, this is after 4 passes, the squadron LSO calls up and goes, "Hey, Viking, we can't find your squadron LSO. He's nowhere to be found on the ship."
He's in the.
Yeah, I said, "Well, Bob, that's because I'm sitting there in the right seat."
I know where he is.
Yeah.
Ooh, pick me. Pick me.
He goes, "Where's your assistant?" I said, "Well, he's sitting in the left seat." And he goes, "Hey, I got an idea. Why don't you change seats with Joe?" And I said, "I'm not going to ruin my landing grade." That isn't what I said, but I would, Bob, but I'm not qualified to go at night. I only had 1 day landing.
Beautiful.
And so on the 6th trap, we finally got aboard. But it was one of those things where we had guys in the back
You're right in the barrel.
were watching this on FLIR, and they kept trying to tell us things. It's like, "Stop talking to us. We're working here."
Yeah, we know how screwed up this is. Don't need to tell us.
That's when you needed the shot of medicinal brandy after you landed.
Oh boy!
Right on. Oh, that's for boating though.
Yeah.
But before you move on, let me ask. So you stood on that platform a lot,
Yes.
and what's the most colorful or most frightening thing you saw standing on the LSO?
We did have an F-14 ramp strike during workups. I was in Tim Keating's. He was a classmate of mine. I was in company 6 and he was in company 4 at the academy. We knew each other. We've been friends for 4 years. He was an A7 LSO on his second or third cruise with the A7 squadron. He was our team leader, and I was assigned to his team. There are 4 or 5 guys in the team. The way it works on the LSO platform, which is 5x5, there's a air wing CAG LSO, Commander Air Group is a CAG. And there's a CAG LSO who's a senior LSO over all the LSOs on the boat. There are 4 or 5 team leaders. You'd fly, the way it works as an LSO, you fly 2 days and then you wave 1 whole day and night. And each of the squadrons has several LSOs and they become part of the team. This night we were bringing in F-14s on the first real dark landing, night landing. And the second guy down, I was writing book for Tim. The way it works, the CAG controlling LSO stands behind the team leader, who is a controlling LSO at night. He has the pickle switch to control the wave-off lights on the mirror, and he has a radio. He's talking to the pilots coming in. The guy writing book, who's standing right beside him, looks at the second guy back at night and makes sure he's not going to kill himself. Well, this night, the second guy back was really far right. So I turned to the CAG LSO and said, "Hey, second guy needs to come left for lineup." And you always have an A and B channel. First guy's on A, second guy's on B. The CAG LSO changed to the B channel and called left for lineup. We took the first F-14, and now we're looking at the second guy that was started off bad, and his night's going from bad to worse. He gets slow in the middle, and he gets a power call, goes high and close and sucks off all the power and starts coming down. And 5.5 seconds from the ramp, we gave him power, wave off, wave off. The red wave off lights on the mirror are flashing. As he's coming down, he notices the ball's dropping. He begins ratcheting the nose up to try to hold the ball.
Uh-oh.
And now, these are turbofan engines on the F-14. He had them in the spool down.
So it takes a second to spool up.
Takes about 6 years, I think, for the power to come up when you're that low.
When he got the first power, he took it. He said he took it, locked his arm, and this guy was an F-14 LSO. He was a junior LSO in an F-14 squadron. He locked his arm, but the engine took a while to spool up, and he's trying to hold the ball up. Now, as the engine starts spooling up, he's behind the power curve.
Yeah,
there isn't enough power to get him overcome the drag of where he is, and he smacked the back of the ramp. The main gear made the deck.
The main gear cleared the round out, the round down.
The rest, the engine's part fell off.
Oh shit!
The only thing he did all night long was get his lineup squared away. All the debris went up and off the angle.
Thank goodness.
Now, the way carrier crashes work, people die.
Yeah.
On this LSO platform, on the Nimitz, it was sunken. It was 3 feet below the flight deck level. So you couldn't stand on the flight deck. You could only lean over there to watch them if you needed to. But they had this big steel net off the side of you, about 8 feet down, that's woven, big steel cords.
Yeah. Steel mesh, big steel mesh net, basically, you jump into, right?
Yeah. And the first thing you do as an LSO, if there aren't any mattresses there, you go down to the enlisted bunk rooms and steal mattresses and go up and plant them all over there. Because if you jump into a steel net, it's going to be like straining yourself as you go through there.
I was going to say, you're going to strain yourself, right? Yeah.
But one of my fears was the way the adrenaline works is that I need to jump in the net. I'll probably miss the net by jumping over it and end up on a swan dive for 60 feet down to the ocean.
Right. At night.
Yeah. This night I found out that.
And the Russian judge says.
This night I found out it isn't your brain that takes control. It's your knees. As you're sitting there watching this, we knew he was going to hit the ramp. And I'm sitting there, I can't believe he's going to hit the ramp. I can't. And your knees go, we're out of here. We don't get paid enough to do this.
Right.
And we all collapsed in basically a big puppy pile on the platform and rolled into the net. And we jumped over the railing and into the first door we came to, slammed the fireproof door because there's always fire and debris on these things.
Oh, yeah.
And the CAG LSO goes, Tim Keating, take your roll of your team and let's see who isn't here. Well, Keating wasn't there.
Yeah.
And since he was a classmate of mine, I told the CAG LSO, I'll go check on him, figuring that I'm going to find Keating cut in half or bleeding or maimed or something.
Right.
So I climb out, get on the rail, peer over the platform, and Keating's up there. God damn son of a bitch, hit the fucking ramp on me. I'm going to kill you.
He was there. He never jumped over.
No, he's still cussing out the pilot who's now in a parachute coming down, landing in the water. The Rio, the back seater, ended up on top of an A6, and he was the only one in this whole accident that got hurt because he cut his arm on a blade antenna on the top of the A6 and needed about 6 stitches to fix the cut.
Well, that's a miracle.
It was. All the debris went up and off the angle. And on a carrier, the way it works is you have a yellow line that's the foul line. And all the mechanics and all the deck crew were lining that thing on a recovery, waiting for their planes to come in.
Yeah, which is on the right-hand side, right? The foul line's on the right-hand side of the angled deck.
Yep. And the only airplane that got hurt was an S-3 because one of the main gears bounced up and came down on a wing and punched a hole in the top of the wing from the tire as it bounced off into the ocean.
Nobody died.
Nobody got hurt.
That is a miracle.
And the board gave the pilot an up, and he made the cruise with us.
Nice.
Keating was not at fault for it. And one of the really amazing things, years later, I'm sitting having a RC Cola watching the news. And after the news, I switched on a program called JAG. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that.
Yeah. I used to
say about a Navy JAG lawyer that's an F-14 pilot.
Yes.
Well, on this program, he's got a woman pilot that having trouble at the boat. So he's out working with her on a 2-plane and bringing her into the carrier at night in a storm. And I'm sitting there watching our accident, our ramp strike on this.
It was the Platt tape from that night.
The Platt tape from that night. And I'm sitting there, I can't believe the Navy did this.
How about that?
Let them have it.
Maybe the Navy didn't know they had that Platt tape.
Right? You can use anything for less than 30 seconds. Fair use.
I haven't seen Keating since we left the off of that cruise, but I always wanted to ask him if he knew that the Navy released our ramp strike for commercial TV.
Well, that's a good story because it kind of has a happy ending. Nobody died there.
Nobody died.
Other than the F-14 that was destroyed. Nothing else really got destroyed.
Sounds like you even got to reuse that S-3.
They patched that up. Incidentally,
get some speed tape and watch
this cruise on the Nimitz 78 Med cruise was the first time in naval aviation history, and it was 68 years into it, that not one pilot got killed. Which is an amazing story. Yeah. We lost 5 airplanes, but we got all the pilots back.
So you lost 5 airplanes in one cruise.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was one was the F-14 incident you just talked about.
Yeah.
What were the other aircraft?
An A7 got in a flat spin, which you can't get an inverted flat spin. And you can't get an A7 out of a flat spin, but an inverted flat spin. And it turned out he was a test pilot from Pax River. So when he said it was an inverted, they took his word for it.
Yeah.
He punched out and they got him back. We lost a helo. We had an RA-5C break its back on landing.
What's
it's the Vigilante, the big
Vigilante.
supersonic bomber that became a recon plane.
Yes.
Landed, trapped aboard, and broke right behind the cockpit.
Oops.
Okay. Yeah. And what else did we lose? I can't remember the other ones.
But no pilots.
No pilot.
No
the
pilots.
Hilo we lost one of our H3s in the Caribbean.
And they all got out.
That one was amazing. They had a transmission problem, so they put it down on the water about 3 miles off the side of the ship. They were on plane guard duty, and so
who gets the crew when the plane guard goes down? Shit.
Well, the boat kind of motored over beside it, and now the Hilo squadron skipper and maintenance officer are arguing with the first lieutenant on the boat and the executive officer of who gets to recover the Hilo. In the meantime, the crew is in their rubber life rafts and get picked up. And we're sitting there watching this Hilo slowly sink into the water. And as we're watching it, all of a sudden the water goes over the floor of the door, and the boat keeps sinking, and it gets fuller and fuller. And pretty soon the rotors are afloat and they settle. And now they decide, okay, it's time to put the crane on it and pull it up. Well, the only problem is now you're pulling up the whole entire ocean with it.
Right.
Yeah, it's full of water now.
Water's
heavy.
It didn't come. The cable snapped, and we watched it disappear out of sight.
How about that? So something that I wanted to ask you earlier, but I didn't want to interrupt because you were kind of on a roll. And this goes way back to Meridian. You were an instructor there. When you were instructor in the training command, did you lose any A4s during the period you were there?
Yes, 3.
Oh my
Didn't lose a student though.
Okay.
The problem we were having, the landing gear cable was being misrigged on the main gear, and it occasionally hang up on the door when it came down.
Yeah.
So you would try to do all kinds of things: raise the gear, lower the gear, G it, negative G it. If that didn't work, you just brought the gear up into the belly and landed on the drop tanks.
Sure.
And the damage, there was no damage to the airplane. They'd skid out they'd foam the runway. You'd try to land in the foam. They'd take the drop tank, they'd jack the airplane up, lower the gear, take the drop tanks off, and have to take off the nose cone. And it's a fiberglass nose cone. Yep. And it wasn't an accident. It was a mishap.
Yeah, because of the cost.
Yeah. In the meantime, guys would punch out of this thing because it was such the TA4 sits up high on a skier.
Yeah.
And when you come down, it's really low. And so they'd scare people and they'd punch out.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting.
Yeah.
I was just curious because we talk about a lot, especially with the fellow naval aviator stories and how many crew and airplanes are lost just in training.
Yeah.
And so that's what made me think of it.
Yeah. In my entire Navy career, we didn't lose a pilot in any of the squadrons I was in.
That's a miracle.
It is amazing.
That's rare. I mean, that is so rare.
Miraculous, yes.
Now, I lost friends and fellow pilots after they went to other squadrons, but never in the squadrons I was in.
You must be like the good luck charm.
I'm the little lucky charm and leprechaun.
A giant leprechaun.
Wow. If we have time, we made the first port call into Israel by a carrier in the Navy in 1978.
Very, very first ever?
Very first. And by port call, I mean we went into Haifa.
Yeah.
And we stayed a mile off the beach out of Haifa. And then you bowed in to Haifa. But on going in there, since we were the first one, it was a big deal. So the Israeli War Cabinet came out and they helicoptered aboard, and we were going to put on our air wing flight demonstration. Each of the squadrons comes in and does their thing. The F-14s come by fast, and they come by slow with the wings out. The A-7s come in and do a bunch of bombing stuff. And our last part of our air wing was always an A-6 would come in with all the Mark 82s and do a laydown, which is pretty impressive. They can carry a lot of Mark 82s.
Oh, yeah.
And the way they set this up is they put a empty 55-gallon drum with a flare on it, one at one end and another one at the other end, and that's your run-in line for the demonstration. Well, the ship's navigator forgot to take into account drift of the ocean.
Oops.
And by the time the A6 came in and did its laydown, the air was filled with this whirling, buzzing stuff. The Israelis up, the Golda Meir, Moshe Dayan, all the top Israeli people were in the catwalk on the island watching this thing. They were the only ones that understood these were frags from the bombs, and they were pulling people down. The rest of us Americans, we never heard this before. And we're going,
right?
Hey, what is that?
What is that whizzing sound going by?
Yeah.
Yeah. But they knew that because they live that shit every day.
Yeah, they get fragged all the time.
Get down. Everybody get down.
Can you imagine the headlines in the papers? Israeli war cabinet killed by American Navy pilots.
Naval war demonstration team.
USS Nimitz wreaks havoc.
One of the things we did on this day, we went. All the VIPs had commanders, et cetera, escorting them around. We went up on the flight deck to watch this thing, and the Israeli helicopter pilots were standing around. Nobody was talking to them. We went over and stuck up a conversation with one who turned out to be Moshe Dayan's son. And we invited him down to the wardroom to have lunch with us. He invited us down to Tel Aviv that night to go to dinner with him. And we took him up on that, and he showed us one heck of a good time in Tel Aviv.
How about that?
Yeah.
I can only imagine. That is cool. That is awesome.
Okay. Another story I'll share with you, because this goes to your theme song of crossing the Atlantic.
Uh-huh.
We were at the end of cruise. One of our last ports was in England, and we were going out to operate in the North Sea on 4th of July.
Okay.
With a bunch of Brits on board, and going to do just a couple cycles of flying to impress the Brits. And I got detailed to be in one of these cycles. And in the Navy, if the sea air temperature is 55 or below, you're supposed to wear your poopy suit, which is your survival suit. I was too big for a survival suit, so I was able to have a neoprene diving suit made for me to order. And I had all kinds of zippers on this thing so that when I wasn't in the water, I could unzip it and would be comfortable instead of in the poopy suit where everybody sweats to death.
Hey, just to define this for all the listeners that don't know what this is, can you describe the poopy suit?
It is.
Let me jump in before you do and say to save some of them that are scuba divers, it's a dry suit.
Yeah, it's a dry suit.
You've done some scuba diving dry suit. Yeah.
It's basically a big bag that you wear.
Yeah.
Your flight gear over it.
It's horrible. It's got a neck seal, arm seals. It's booted. You put it on, zip it up, and you're in a dry
cocoon.
suit.
Yeah.
You're in a Ziploc bag.
Yeah.
No water gets in.
But it's not insulated. So you would wear your
flight suit, normal stuff underneath it, because you're going to sweat a lot. You need something to absorb that. Yeah. Well, we're going out. It's a single cycle, which is an hour and 45 minutes. And I've got my wetsuit on and my flight gear over the top of it. And as we're going to man up, I thought for a moment, damn, I didn't take a piss call. But I thought, it's only an hour and 45 minutes. That's not a big deal.
Yeah.
So we go up, we man up, take the cat shot, and immediately the bladder low overfill light begins flashing.
Of course.
And so now we're flying around. And one of the things you do, especially in a crew airplane, you never admit you're uncomfortable or you have a problem. Because if you do, that's when the heckling starts in.
Yeah. Oh, you can't hold it. You got old man bladder. Yeah, right. It just starts.
Yeah.
And people began swishing water around in their little canteen things, and
Right.
so.
And I imagine when you're trying to go, it's probably, loading up. Yeah, let's pull a couple G's here
it's
and unload,
horrible,
and get you to piss on your
the
shoes.
S-3 didn't have a relief tube. It had baggies with a sponge in them.
Yeah, piddle pack.
Piddle
packs.
You piss into the pill pack. The sponge absorbs the urine. You zip it up. You're good to go.
Yeah.
Well, in GQ on a carrier, they secure flushing water, so you can't use the urinals or anything else. So all the deckhands go in the S3s and steal the piddle packs to use. So by this part of the cruise, there were no piddle packs. So I was sitting there very uncomfortable. And after about 30 minutes, hey, guys, please check and see if you got a piddle pack by mistake in your little cubby hole there beside your seat. Oh, why? You got to take a piss? No, I was just wondering that, and I was thinking of making a sandwich later and putting it in the baggie.
Yeah, that's it. That's my story, and I'm stuck with it. It
got really bad. And so finally I decided, okay, I'm going to take my helmet bag and I'm going to go back to the E&E tunnel and I'm going to unzip everything and strip down and take a piss. So I go back there and I'm trying to, and it became one, I can't stand up straight in this thing because it's only about 4.5 feet tall. And I'm trying to unzip thing. And finally it got to the point, there's no way if I ever do get His Highness out, it's probably going to be all over me and all the E&E stuff. And I said, you just got to resign yourself to. So I go back and sit down and say, okay, I'm going to get this out till we go back at the end of the cycle. Well, about that time, the boat calls up and goes, hey, the Norwegians have lost the Russian bear coming around the peninsula. We want to double cycle you, so you and the
no,
you and the E2 can triangulate them with your ESM gear and find them. And immediately I broke out in a cold sweat because now it's another hour and 45 minutes till I can go back. I am almost dying. I mean, why my bladder didn't burst, I don't know. As we're coming in, I turned to my buddy. I'm in the right seat. I'm not flying. I'm just a rider. And I told my buddy, I said, if you bolt her on this, if my bladder exploding doesn't kill you, I will. We come into the break. He forgot to drop the hook.
No.
Yes. So I caught it, slammed it down, and said, asshole, you're going to pay for this.
Asshole.
Mistakes were made.
We trapped the board, and before we even pulled back in the wire, I was out of the seat and thrown open the door and was running across the flight deck, jumped it down into the catwalk. First door I come to, I throw open, run down the passageway. First head I come to is all taped up with masking tape.
Of course it is.
This poor seaman Deuce is in there cleaning the head for inspection. I went there like a knife through hot butter. And I'm unzipping and throwing things off. And you can't come in there, sir. I got an inspection. I said, son, if my bladder doesn't kill you or you don't drown from this urine, I will clean the head for you. Go get your chief. I'll explain it to him. And I must have pissed for about 20 minutes. Oh, man. That song about crossing the ocean.
Yeah.
Trying to piss in a pip. Oh.
Yeah. Right.
It brought cold sweat to my forehead.
We've all been there. It's just so that I love that song, but just because I'm there, I've done that. It's like, good Lord.
Here's something else. There was a guy, an LSO, A7 LSO, that had this amorphous patch on, a bunch of brown with gold squiggly lines through it. And you never ask another guy what his patches are because you're going to be made fun of. After a couple of months, I couldn't take it anymore. I said, what the hell is that patch for? He said, oh, this is a patch you get awarded for taking a shit in your helmet bag in an A7. Single airplane, having to take everything off because you got to,
Yeah. That's impressive because I don't know anybody that's ever done that. I know some guys that just poop their pants because, you're strapped. You're
strapped in.
Oh, my God. That's impressive.
Another story. I had a friend in VT7 that was an instructor who came from A1s in Vietnam. The A1 could spend 9 hours airborne. And it was such a big single-seat airplane. It had a door behind it.
Sky Raider, right? Sky Raider. Yeah.
They had a porta potty back there like you have in a camper. So if you ever needed to go, you just unstrap, put it on autopilot, and unstrap and go back in the back and take a dump.
Uh-oh.
Well, he's flying wing on this mission, and he signals to the lead that he's got to go take a dump. And he gets the lead. He sets the airplane up. He goes back and straps everything, takes the dump, resuits, goes to open the door, and it's locked.
What?
He's locked himself in the back of the plane.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Well, that's when we found what the purpose of the survival knife is really for. He took his survival knife and cut his way through the door. And it took him a long time to do that. In the meantime, the lead is flying over the top of him, looking upside down. Where is this guy? Is he just hiding on me? Where did he go?
Oh.
It took him 20 minutes to cut enough hole in it that he could reach in and unlock it from the other side.
Oh.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrifying. So, well, none of that will compare then. We're getting close to the end of our time together, but I'm going to put you on the spot, Carrott, and ask you, since you're retired, flying is what? 99% boredom, 1% sheer terror. And people get on passenger airliners all the time. And for the most part, it's unbelievably safe. Every now and then there's a close call. What's either the closest call or the funniest thing or the scariest thing that you recall from your civilian flying career?
I had 3 fires on airborne.
3?
3.
God.
Yeah. 2 on the.
Well, you were making up for your good luck charm
I guess so.
in the squadron.
My first one was in the Super 80, and we were at 35,000 feet going by Cleveland over the Great Lakes at 11 o'clock at night. And all of a sudden I smelled something. I turned to my FO. I said, "Did you just take your shoes off?" Because it smelled like wet gym socks.
Yeah.
And he said, "No, did you just fart?" I said, "No." I said, "Okay, let's do mask on, declare an emergency. We're going to drop into Cleveland." It was an electrical fire in the first class galley. And civilian airplanes and the airliners, all the air from the back is sucked into the cockpit and then down over the cockpit into the E&E compartment to be recycled.
Right. Yep. Cool the
electronic
avionics and send it overboard.
And so we were pulling this electrical smoke in. We dumped it and landed in Detroit. And I did my only evacuation in my career. We were sitting on the runway. We stopped and I thought, well, maybe it's over, maybe it's not. But on the other hand, why take the chance? So I did the easy victor, and we started throwing all 8 of our passengers out the back. And on the captain's job is always to walk the airplane, make sure everybody gets out.
Yeah.
And in the Super 80, what's staring you is the tail cone exit, the back stairs exit.
Right.
The tail cone's gone, the slide. So I just continued through the back, went down the slide. And what they don't tell you is the tail cone's supposed to drop and roll away, but sometimes it doesn't, and the slide comes out and lands on top of it. So as I went down, I hit this big ski ramp and ended up assholes over elbows trying to fly myself onto, so I wouldn't hit on my back, and did a perfect 4-point landing on the tarmac.
It's funny, but it's not funny.
So the only thing injured was your dignity.
Yeah. At least I didn't break my tailbone.
All right, so that's the first fire.
Yeah. The second fire, I was flying with a gentleman who was the 7.6 Czech airman.
Okay.
Who called himself Mr. 767.
Oh, great.
And we got a call from the back. I was his co-pilot. I had my cowboy boots off. I had my sleeves rolled up. I had my tie undone. And the flight attendant in the very back calls up and says, "I think we got a fire back here." And he looks at me and says, "Why don't you go take care of it?" And I said, "Well, I've got to get dressed and all that."
You're Mr. 767. Why don't you go take care of it?
I'm going to go back there and I'm going to come back and tell you it's out. And you're going to go, "Well, I better go check." I said, "So why don't we just cut to the chase and you go check?"
Yeah.
There you go. Right.
So he did. And it was, again, a galley fire. And you pull the circuit breakers. It's electrical fire, so that takes care of it. We came back and he goes, "What do you think we ought to do? We're going scheduled San Diego to Chicago." I said, "We've had a fire. I think we ought to put the plane on the ground and let them figure out if it's all out or not." I said, "I'd hate to be over liberal Kansas in the middle of nowhere and have this thing start up again."
Right.
So we did a dive into into Phoenix and put it on the ground and checked it out. And then the passengers were mad at us because a bunch of them had Chicago Bear tickets that day.
Should have gone the day before.
And the last one was a 7.5 going into Chicago with me, the captain. And it was over, we had just passed St. Joe, which is something you guys are familiar with, at 35,000 feet when I got a call that there was a smell of an electrical fire in one of the lavatories. And so we did a dive in, and by the time we got down, we were close to Chicago. And I hit the 3 mile point at Chicago at 450 knots in the 7.5 at 2,000 feet.
All right.
And it dawned on me that maybe I better slow this thing down so we can actually land instead of doing a low pass by Chicago on fire.
Give an air show.
So we
I didn't know the 7.5 had afterburners.
we threw everything out, slowed it down, landed, got clearance to the gate. And as I'm pulling in to the gate area, gate tells us there's a 20-minute hold for our gates occupied.
For the love
and I said,
hey, Ram Tower, if you had another guess.
I said, okay, here's the deal. You got about 2 minutes to give me a gate because I'm going to pull in the middle of the, between the turn and all the gate area, and I'm going to do an emergency evacuation with my passengers. And then you're going to not get no airplanes out of here for the next 6 hours.
Yeah, so figure that out.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, no.
Oh, we got a gate for you.
Yeah.
It's a miracle. Oh, man, that's funny. Well, Carrott, thank you so much. These are great stories. This is going to be a fun show to put on.
I didn't think it was.
Enjoy listening.
I just kind of had the trepidations because after listening to Captain Williams, who was a phenomenal individual, and his career was amazing. It
was fun.
I thought, I don't have much to tell anybody.
Yeah. Give us the airplanes you didn't fly so we can get a short list out.
I thought that was amazing. And he's just so lackadaisical about it,
Oh, I know. He's talking about it.
My Rio jumped out and I just kept flying.
Had to be in full afterburner to keep it flying.
With a fire.
With fires. Well, thank you. Hey, Carrott, thank you for your service to our country and for being a naval aviator. We really appreciate that.
Well, it was nice talking to even a couple of jarheads.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. Twist it. Stick it in and twist it. That's okay. I would expect nothing less from a Navy man.
Right. Well, I have to say it then. So we always get the grief from the Navy. The Marines were a part of the Department of the Navy.
Yeah. Got their paycheck signed.
The men's department.
The men's department.
No, we're the men's department.
Right back at you.
So yeah. Anyway, well, thank you for your service. We also need to thank none other than Dave Hamilton over at the
Thank you, Dave.
Cab that takes good care of us and helped us get this show up and running. So big thanks to Dave. If you're at all tech oriented, want a good tech podcast to listen to, highly recommend the Mac Geek Gab. And he also does the Gig Gab if you're a musician, and the Business Brain for running your own small business. He and another entrepreneur go through the problems, trials, and tribulations of business. All right, here's the action you need to take, dear listener. Keep sharing. We've been doing that, and that's amazing, and our growth has been great. What hasn't been great is Rumble. We need 20 more.
And then we won't have to pay to be on Rumble. Right. As soon as we hit the magic number of 100. Doesn't hey, RePete, does it cost anything?
It costs you nothing but a few minutes of your time to sign up. And then you'll get emails when we go live so that you can tell. For instance, right now on Rumble, we have 18 folks watching us. People have been in and out the entire show doing the live stream. You can watch us live stream. You can see all the mistakes, see all the stupidity going on in the background, and have some fun as we do it live and see the truly the raw pimples and all, so to speak.
Yeah.
So
share it with your friends.
I certainly will.
Yeah. So there I was, .us/Rumble. You can follow us also on Facebook. So there I was, .us/Facebook. And the same holds true for Twitter. I need to get some tweets up there, though. I haven't been doing that. I've been bad about that.
Thank you for doing that, by the way.
Shoot us some emails. All right. We've gotten some amazing emails. People that are aware of some the crashes that we've talked about. People that wrote in. A gent wrote in, and I actually made a post of it. It's on our website, so therewas.us. It's about 2 or 3 down now. It's not a podcast, but it's an email about his dad ejecting from an A4 off Hawaii.
Marine
and
aviator.
The newspaper articles that covered it. Yep.
It's a good story. It's a good article too.
Yeah. So shoot Fig an email, fig@sothereiwas.us, or me, RePete@sothereiwas.us. Thank you to our sponsor, robinsbirdbraindesigns.com. If you need something customized, personalized in a gift format, this shows that you've put a lot of thought and effort into it. We have coasters with squadron logos and your call sign, or airplane instruments and your tail number, anything along those lines. Custom etched coasters. She can etch just about anything, though. Your iPad, your laptop, coasters, Christmas decorations, Halloween, Easter's coming up. Reach out to robinsbirdbraindesigns.com and work with her to get you some amazing gifts for people. Or treat yourself to something. That music you hear in the background comes from our friends, the Dos Gringos, the 2 gents who give the Air Force a great name. Lots of good music, lots of fun.
Great songs.
We enjoy their music immensely, and we're grateful that they share it with us. So until next week, everybody stay safe and
don't sit on the ejection seat handle. Oh, check 6. Check 6.
I would do, yeah, exactly. I would do either. Stay safe and check 6.
Well, there I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond of all the shit I was wearing on that day. Now an F-16 is cramped enough, but it's even worse with all that stuff supposed to save your life. But we knew there was no way. 'Cause when you're going down the North Atlantic, man, it's over.
Like the song says, Fig.
It's over.
Thank you, gentlemen.
So it takes a second to spool up.
Takes about 6 years, I think, for the power to come up when you're that low.